to explain the bill. Mrs. Weiner, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for some questions?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
I do.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Patterson. I just want to ask some questions about how this bill will function. So currently, right now in Texas, if you're going to create a profile on a social media account, do you have to upload your government ID
No,
or
you do
submit to a facial scan?
You may have a facial scan whether you want it or not, but you don't have to submit your photo ID.
So under this bill, isn't it true that every single Texan is going to end up needing to find some way to prove their age to join a social media site?
Not necessarily. In the bill, it asks for social media companies can use a commercially reasonable method that relies on public or private transactional data. So it could potentially be your photo ID that you would upload. I would contend that the social media companies know far more about you than what's on your photo ID, but it could be another method as well.
So the thing I'm concerned about is, there are some social media companies where it's very public who we are. Most of us on Facebook, and I suspect you with me remember that shift. When we were younger, the internet was not a place where you were ever publicly who you are. You were supposed to be very careful. Facebook popularized it, and it became common for members or people who are on the site to use their full name. But there are other websites, other social media sites that use a different dynamic where the opportunity to cloak your identity for whatever reason is there. So let's say if somebody was opening a new Reddit account under this, wouldn't that require this person to prove exactly who they are to that company and eliminate some option of privacy?
I think the company more often than not knows who their users are. They are not in the business of content sharing between users. They are in the business of data collection on their users. That is their product. We are their product. And so they know everything about their product. So I don't believe that this bill prescribes that every user of a social media platform would have to state in their profile what their name is. I mean, there could still be the random accounts, but the social media companies would have to know who's creating that account, yes.
Right, so somebody could not have an account with a social media company without that company knowing precisely who they are.
100%. Yes, that they were 18 or older.
Well, is there a way for them to demonstrate they're above 18 without confirming their identity?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So what happens to Texans who don't have a current ID or some other way to be able to confirm who they are?
The bill allows for that. It doesn't have to be a photo ID.
Yeah. So what about the concern that this is helping these social media companies collect even more data on us and have that available and potentially insecurely?
I don't know how they could collect more data on us than they already do. They know when you're happy. They know when you're sad. They know when you're hungry. They know when you break up with your boyfriend. They know everything about you. They know where you plug in your phone at night. They know who else's phones are nearby when you plug in your phone at night. They know more about you than you know about yourself.
So why should we give them more?
I don't believe that we are.
Why should we require adult Texans to give them more information?
I don't believe we are. They can use commercially public or private data to verify their users. I don't believe that there's anything on my driver's license that the social media company doesn't know about me already.
I mean, theoretically, most social media companies don't actually have our driver's license number, correct? We're not giving them that.
Well, we may not give them that, but there's nothing that says that they can't cross-reference the data that they collect on us with other public data that's out there. I mean, these things aren't run by a group of engineers in the back room anymore. Oftentimes, these are AI-operated programs that, I mean, they're pulling data in from all over the internet. They know who their users are. I guarantee you that.
Okay. Is it not true that Arkansas's Act 689, which also has an age verification requirement, was recently permanently enjoined?
That could be true. I'm not familiar with Arkansas, but what I will tell you is that this body last session passed a bill creating age verification requirements for pornography websites. Now, the definition of that was, I think it was predominantly used for pornography. I think that, we could stretch that a little bit and say, Twitter or X, for example, has pornography on their website. Other social media platforms have pornography on their websites. And that bill or that case is being heard before the Supreme Court and is expected to be released this summer, I believe in June. And so we'll know more about that this summer in June in terms of age verification on websites for the state of Texas.
Yeah. Now, to be clear, your bill doesn't just apply to sites where there may or may not be porn, correct?
Any social media platform.
So if a child wants to use a social media platform for a legitimate purpose, like accessing educational materials, coordinating assignments, or connecting with relatives, are they going to be able to do that under this bill?
No, no one under the age of 18 would be able to access it. And let's talk about that real quick, because I think that's an important point. Back in the day, as my kids love to hear me say, you had social media and you were connected to the people that you were connected with, and you only saw the material that they put forward. So if I wanted to have a social media platform and I wanted to connect with my grandparents that lived in another state, or my aunts and uncles that live in a different area, I could do that and we could stay in touch for that purpose. But a lot of these social media platforms now have what some call a For You page, or other ways to get you to stay on their platforms longer or to connect with other material longer. And that's the most dangerous part of this, because that's where you're starting to see the pornography. That's where you're starting to see the videos about self-harm and suicide. That's where you're starting to see the images about drug use. That's where you're starting to see these rabbit holes that they take our kids down about anorexia and other forms of mental health disorders. And so it's not a safe product for children. It's just not. It would be if all we could do is connect with people that we know and connect with our family members. It would absolutely be a safe product. It is not that anymore. That's not what this is.
Yeah. And, Representative Patterson, I want to be clear. I think I agree with a lot of your goals here. It does concern me the different way a lot of our youth interact with social media, and even the way adults interact with social media.
Yeah.
I think we should see more regulation of that space, particularly around data, particularly around having some good practices that do protect youth. I still am struggling with this outright ban and both the effect it has on adults' privacy and on minors' right to connect. Now, could you talk about why your bill sets a limit at age 18 instead of allowing older minors some ability to use these tools?
Yeah, we set the age of 18 just because we have a number of laws in place in the state, most of which are 18. Some have been moved recently to 21, but to protect their physical well-being. So, for example, you can't buy a handgun if you're under the age of 18. You can't buy alcohol if you're under the age of 18. You can't buy tobacco. You can't do drugs. There's a number of things that children aren't allowed to do that adults are allowed to do. And the age of adulthood in Texas is 18, and so that's why we stuck with that age.
Right. But we have used lower age limits for other things. I mean, driving
100%. Coming
to mind for one. I know you've talked about this bill too in terms of like rights for parents to control what their kids have access to. Do parents not already have a lot of that control in choosing whether or not to give their kid a device or set up certain safety settings, which apps to allow children to download?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, in this bill, it is prescribed that a parent has the right to take down their child's, if they can prove that it's their child, they have the right to take down their child's social media page as well if one is created. As it relates to those other issues, I don't believe that parents stand a chance against social media companies that hire child psychologists to better hook their users onto their platforms. I don't believe that parents stand a chance to the addictive nature of these social media platforms. I think that's why the Surgeon General in 2024 compared social media to cigarettes. I believe that this is the modern day cigarette. I think that we are going to wake up at some point in this country and realize what we have done to an entire generation of kids that are on this highly addictive product called social media. And I think that that's why there's a lot of concern about that. I think that's why that there are documentaries made about this issue. I think that's why there's books written about this issue, because it is a dangerous product that our kids have access to. I believe personally that it is the most dangerous product that our kids have legal access to in the state of Texas.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for answering my questions, Representative
Thank you, ma'am.
Patterson.
Mr. Wu, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, will the gentleman yield for
Will the
questions?
gentleman yield for questions?
I yield.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you. And Chairman Patterson, I absolutely agree with you with your last statements about how dangerous I think social media has become. But my issue sort of is, number one, like that we're doing this just in Texas. I think we should be doing this at a national level so we have a consistent rule throughout all states instead of just state by state. But here is, I think, for me as a civil libertarian, the bigger issue. In your bill, adults would need to verify that they are adults, correct?
Well, the social media companies would have to verify that their users are adults.
And those users would be required to to give those companies their personal information.
They do that willingly already.
But I mean, like submit government records, things.
Not
that-
necessarily. It's any commercially, I mean, in the bill it's written, so you don't have to, it's not necessarily a photo ID, a government issued ID. It is, they may use a commercially reasonable method that relies on public or private transactional data to verify the age. So it's, they could require you to upload a photo ID, as many of us have. If we have political ads on Facebook, let's say, we have to upload a photo ID to Facebook to verify who we are, and then they have to send us a letter. But there are other means to verify. I mean,
Absolutely.
there's financial data out there. There's facial recognition software. They know who their users are. I guarantee you that.
And if somebody wants to, let's say for the purposes of political speech, they want to create an anonymous account or a parody account and says, I'm not actually this person. I'm a fake person, or I'm pretending to be this other person as a joke. They would not be able to create those accounts unless they put in their personal information and verified it.
That's correct, but I think, and this is a caveat to that whole thing, yes, the social media company would have to verify that it is an adult creating the account, but nowhere in this bill does it prescribe that you have to use your name on your profile. You could use, there's a host of fake accounts on Twitter, that only talk about what we do in this chamber, and they don't have someone's name. That would not have to change. It would just be that the social media company has to verify that that is someone that is 18 years old or older.
What if they choose a cartoon character as their avatar or as their profile?
That's not prescribed. I mean, there's no changes to that in this bill. You don't have to have your picture on your profile. You don't have to have your name on your profile. You could have what I would commonly refer to as a fake account that doesn't have any identifying information on you. It's just that the company would have to know, the Facebook or the X or whoever would have to know that that person creating that account is an adult behind the scenes.
And what I'm asking is, if somebody for their own safety, because they're going to make political statements that may get them in trouble for their day job or whatever, they go out of their way to make sure that there's nothing linking them personally to the account, they would no longer be able to create that account.
Well, the social media company would have to verify that it's someone 18 years or older, and then in this bill, it is prescribed. They have to delete that information once they verify that it's an adult, and so that information is not stored anywhere. The social media company deletes it, and so unless they didn't abide by this, what could be law, there would be no information out there for anyone in the public to find.
But can you imagine a situation where people who see how...
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Members, please take your conversations outside the rail.
Can you imagine a situation where someone who looks out into the world and sees the number of times that Facebook, that Bank of America, whoever else has had data breaches and has information stolen from them, that they say, I'm afraid to even give them that much. And they say, because of this law, and because of these requirements, and because of the fear that I might be exposed, that now they're pulling back their political speech. Can you see that situation?
I can absolutely see that situation. I would sympathize with someone in that situation. But what I would suggest, and I think that this is a true statement, the social media companies know far more information about you than what they could possibly use to verify who you are as a person. They know everything about you. That is, they know where you are, they know your interests, they know where you shop, they know your likes, your dislikes, they know when you're happy and when you're sad. They know more about you, and this is the scariest part, especially for our kids. You know, a kid that goes through a traumatic event at school or a breakup or whatever, that social media company is salivating at that opportunity to get that kid to have that one sad moment so that they spend 3 extra seconds hovered over that image or that video about something sad, so that that algorithm then changes and shifts to give that child the opportunity to see more of that content and more of that content. I laid out the statistics yesterday.
No, I absolutely agree with you.
They know more about us
Right.
than we know about ourselves. I don't have any concerns whatsoever about the point that you raised.
No, thank you very much. And I appreciate your
Yes,
discussion
sir.
on this. This is it's an interesting topic.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Wu, for what purpose?
I move to reduce the writing conversations on this bill in third reading and place in the journal for purposes of
Members,
legislative intent.
you heard the motion. Is there objection? The chair hears none, so ordered.
Okay. Mr. Speaker and members, House Bill 186 prevents social media companies from preying on our children. And I move passage in honor of David Molek and the countless other children who have lost their lives due to the harms of social media. I move passage.
The chair recognizes Mr. Toth to speak for the bill.
Members, Mr. Speaker, there are a lot of folks that voted against this bill on second reading, and we may be looking for the perfect social media bill. You're not going to get it. We're losing children every day, and I want to thank Mr. Patterson for introducing this bill. We are losing kids every day to trafficking because of social media. Please support this bill. We can come back 2 years from now and do things to make this better based on what we see happening over the next 2 years. Kids' lives are at stake. Please support this bill.
The question occurs on final passage of House Bill 186. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Patterson voting aye. Show Ms. Fairley voting aye. Show Ms. Gonzalez of El Paso voting aye. Show Ms. Leo Wilson voting aye. Show Mr. Verdell voting aye. Show Mr. Vasut voting aye. Show Mr. De Ayala voting aye. Have all voted. There being 116 ayes, 25 nays, House Bill 186 is finally passed.